Shields up, Earnbreakers. We're kind of here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter. Now, we've had a massive information dump in the form of a new trailer as well as a bunch of new information that came out in the second developer diary. Now, having said that, I want to get into this as fast as possible, so let me just give you guys a quick warning. I will be talking about some of the monsters that were officially released. These are not leaked monsters, including one brand new monster that hasn't been talked about at all before this particular developer diary. So if you guys want to stay in the dark in regards to that, now is the time to bail out. I appreciate you guys showing up to watch the video, but in order to discuss all of the stuff that I have to discuss in regards to this developer diary, I can't really dance around it. There are some monsters that I will have to talk about, as well as a lot of skills that we will be addressing. So thank you for watching. If you don't want to be spoiled and all that, I respect that, but now it's time to click away. Anyways, I'm going to be beginning, so let's get started. One of the first things that I want to talk about was actually one of the last things that was talked about in the developer diary video, because it is extremely relevant for me in regards of one of the last videos that I did for Monster Hunter World, where I was telling people stuff that they should be doing in order to prepare for Iceborne in case they were or were not ready for Iceborne. Well, it looks like with the introduction of Iceborne, they're also going to be bringing a new armor set for people that want to just kind of catch up. It is going to be called the Guardian Armor Set, and they are saying that it is outfitted with skills that are optimal for survival in the new world. But when I actually looked at those skills, I was like, I get it. It's a very defensive set. It's not going to be super optimal for any particular weapon playstyle, but it is overall going to be something that will basically allow you to outlast a lot of the monsters in the game, even well into high rank. However, this is something that if I was you, I would try to replace when I get to high rank, but it is a new set that they're going to be putting out. Me personally, I would like to get it because I like the way that it looks. Maybe we'll be able to put it as layered armor. Hopefully, we'll see if that is the case or not. Because this is also a set that I used in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. It is a set that I do kind of like. But basically, the skills that you're going to be having with this set is Health Boost, Recovery Up, Marathon Runner, and Divine Blessing, all at level 3, which, you know, it's okay for survival and all that. Apparently, the set is also going to be featuring much more defense than normal. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be a super powerful set once you start getting into high rank and once you start having a lot more options available to you. But if you are a new player, it can be useful to get a bit of a leg up on the monsters, particularly the fact that I believe that that set is going to have much higher defense than most sets. Now, to top that off, they're also introducing a new feature when Iceborne hits, which is the Hunter Helper, which basically is going to provide incentive to for master rank hunters to help out lower rank hunters. So this is basically a program that they appear to be doing so that people can catch up faster into Iceborne. And basically, these players will be getting a special bonus reward, which may include Gold Wyverian Prints, which, as you know, we need those to get gems and stuff like that, so that we can augment weapons and whatnot. There might be other rewards. They showed Silver Wyverian Prints and Gold Wyverian Prints in the video, but you know, basically, master rank hunters will be incentivized to help out high rank and low rank hunters. And there's also another part of this which incentivizes high rank hunters to help out low rank hunters. Then depending on your rank, you're going to get better rewards for helping out people basically hunting and progressing through the game, which is a pretty cool thing in my opinion. But basically, again, it's just stuff to hopefully help people catch up. So if you're one of the people that is wondering, man, am I going to be able to catch up if I get into Iceborne when it comes out, just know that there's apparently going to be a lot of incentives for people to help you out. And on top of it, you're also going to have this new armor set that should help you get up to speed as fast as possible. Now, they're also adding a special new reward, and I really like this. I thought it looked really cool. It's basically going to be a little bit of customization flair for your weapons. They're calling them Pendants. These do not have stats associated with them. It's more of something that you can kind of put on your weapons. You can see it right here on the Greatsword. A little pendant thing going on, and these are affected by physics. So as you swing your weapon, it's going to swirl around and stuff. And basically, you're going to be able to get quite a number of pendants from helping out other players. But then you also get pendants from progressing through the master rank of the game, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit more visual customization for your character on top of whatever you can do with layered armor and whatnot. So it's a pretty neat feature all around. Now, I believe that we should start talking about some of the monsters that are coming back. So if you made it all the way here, just know now we're going to be talking about monsters. The very first one is Baraka Dios. So we knew that our good slimy boy was coming back. He was teased in one of the earlier trailers. They showed some more footage of Baraka Dios. He's looking sexy as ever, if I can say so myself. I mean, I like Baraka. I like the slime element, which actually came before the blast element, which they then kind of converted in blast. But slime was pretty freaking cool, and slime weapons were powerful as hell. But, you know, now it's probably just going to be blast stuff. But either way, Baraka looking real good. Going to be punching a lot of people into submission for sure. And I can't wait to fight this bad boy and craft his weapon. Maybe even his armor. I don't know. Depends on the stats, because I'm very meta-driven when it comes to that stuff, unfortunately. Even though, not super meta-driven, though. Somewhat meta-driven. Then they showed us a little bit more of Barioth and gave us tips like, hey, you might want to break some parts off of this monster. Like, you know, maybe break those claws. Prevent him from being as fast as he usually is. But yeah, Barioth, as you guys know, he's coming. They showed some new footage of him. Looks pretty badass. Acidic Glavinus, they talked to us a little bit more about it, how the original Glavinus was basically created from the model. Like, his tail is kind of like a great sword, and the tail of Acidic Glavinus is more like a long sword, so it's going to be more precise and faster when he goes into his blade mode, that he can basically like get the acidic crystals off of it, sharpen it up, and it becomes kind of like a long sword, super fast at attacking you. And they also mentioned that if you get hit while he still has the acidic stuff on him, you can get defense down, so keep that stuff in mind. And they announced a new monster, which is called Namiel. They didn't give us a lot of detail. It was really cool to see just like all of these little colorful bits that he has on him. It feels like this dragon came right out of a friggin' 80s FIFA night party, just like still dancing and stuff with all those disco lights going on. But looks real cool. This is going to be a water-based elder dragon. So a while back when some of the leaks came up, a lot of people were talking about how, oh, there's going to be a new water elder dragon. No, they weren't talking about a new water elder dragon. They were talking, there's going to be a water elder dragon. Probably Mizutsune's coming back and all of that stuff. Wait, is he even elder? I don't think he's an elder dragon. But I don't know. I think a lot of people were basically speculating that Mizutsune was going to be making a return. But apparently the stuff that they had seen was from Namiel. Namiel looks very interesting. Can't wait to fight it. Very, very curious to see what it's going to be like. But just like the monster itself and all of the lighting that he's got going, seems like it's going to be very interesting, particularly when it enrages. But again, they didn't show all that much about this beastie in the video, but I can't wait to fight it. They showed us the new tribe of Linians that is going to be available in Hoarfrost Reach, which are Boa Boa. Looking at them, to me, they just look kind of like scuffed Gajalakas, because Gajalakas are the best. Let's be completely honest. When it comes to Linians, Gajalakas are hands down the best. Still, these look kind of neat. I'll be glad to make friends with them, and when you do make friends with them, which is going to be something that you will probably have to do before you have access to the Feline Raiders, then after you make friends with them, you'll have access to Feline Raiders. Your Palico will probably be able to recruit them if you encounter them along the way, and most likely they will help you out by setting up traps and stuff like that, like the other Linian tribes do. But these are the guys that we're going to be teaming up with in Hoarfrost Reach. They showed some more Velkhana. Velkhana looking pretty good. As a matter of fact, if you guys want to watch more Velkhana gameplay, Eric's actually has like a full hunt of Velkhana over in his channel. I'll probably link to that in the pinned comment below if you guys want to check that stuff out. And also in the trailer, we actually see Velkhana attacking what appears to be like the arena in Seliana, or maybe the hunters are setting up a trap for Velkhana. It's not particularly clear, but it looks like they have access to a bunch of siege weapons while they're fighting Velkhana for the first time. However, in Eric's gameplay, he's just fighting her in Elder's Reach, so I don't know what the deal is with all that stuff. It was also mentioned during the during this Velkhana attack that there was like this new siege weapon called the Dragon Razor. Dragon Razor, I think. Yeah, I think it was Dragon Razor. I'm sorry, it's just so much information that it's just completely going over my head at this point. Anyway, continuing onwards, the next bits were much more regarding the actions that the players take, so like skills, specific moves of weapons, stuff like that. So I'm going to be focusing on that. Now, I'm trying to go real fast because there's a lot of information to go through. Depending on the skill, the maximum scaling for elemental and abnormal status values has changed. We've already seen this in the previous video that I've done talking about all of these different changes that we're bringing up. Maximum scaling for elemental damage has been reworked. A weapon's base element value no longer starts low and quickly reaches its max value. So basically what that means is you're going to be able to get a lot more elemental damage. Now, in order to balance that out, some weapons are going to be getting nerfed and other weapons are going to be getting nerfed in terms of their raw damage, and they're going to get increased damage in terms of their elemental damage. And I know that a lot of people are going to start instantly like trying to really figure this stuff out and like, oh, my weapon got massive nerfs, this friggin' sucks. But trust me, I think you're not going to be able to say whether or not a weapon has been nerfed until you actually experience it in the final game. Kind of like we experienced it a little bit in the open beta, but even in the final game, it's going to be very different because we're going to have access to a lot of more skills. So just hold your horses, take everything that's about to be said here with a grain of salt, because only once you actually experience it can you really figure out whether or not your weapon's been nerfed, or if it feels right, or if it feels wrong. But having said that, I do have some thoughts about some of the stuff that we'll be talking about, so let's get started. The first thing that they say is about the greatsword. So now we got charge slash, strong charge slash, and then they even go into true charge slash as well. So this is your first attack. And when they say charge slash 2 is when you get it charged up to level 2. When they say charge slash 3 is when you get it charged up to level 3. This is your second charge attack, which is the strong charge slash. And then finally go into true charge slash. So basically what they're doing overall in the greatsword is that they are improving the elemental scaling as well as abnormal status scaling on most of the attacks. They're also boosting your raw attack power on some cases, but you're going to see pretty significant nerfs in other cases, and you will need to pay specific attention to what is coming after we talk about all these actions, and you guys will see why. But anyways, when it comes to the first attack, you're going to get, when you charge it up to level 3, you're going to get a little bit more attack power, elemental scaling improvement, as well as abnormal status scaling, and you will see this pretty much across the board. Same thing with your second charge attack power increased, elemental scaling slightly improved, normal status, attack power increased, elemental scaling improved, normal status. Mental scaling improve abnormal status. It's always going to be improving everything with these charge slashes. However, when you get the true charge slash, that's when you see some nerfs, because basically they're trying to get you to actually use these other charge slashes as opposed to always focusing on the true charge slash. Whether or not this is going to be viable is going to be very in the air, particularly because, as you guys can see, they're trying to get greatsword users to actually use elemental greatswords. I can't wait to see Jinx and Tuna's videos on this specific topic. It's going to be very interesting. And do remember, if you are a major min-maxer, you'll want to subscribe Jinx and Tuna right now, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be breaking this shit down from a mathematical standpoint, which I'm personally not going to do. But again, it just seems like they're trying to get you to use elemental greatswords, which is weird because up until this point, pretty much in every Monster Hunter game, I want to say, you've always wanted to have big raw damage greatswords. This feels like it's the first big shift in trying to get people to use elemental on those weapons. But I could be wrong. I'm not a big greatsword player, so it's whatever. You can see a couple of more stuff here. Leaping wide slash, attack power slightly increased, elemental scaling improved, abnormal status improved. So they're buffing leaping wide slashes 1, 2, and 3, as well as strong wide slashes 2 and 3. However, they then go and decrease the jumping slash. And I know this basically is a beefy nerf to aerial greatsword, but keep this in mind because further ahead we're going to be talking about another skill which is going to be very important for this. And you guys will understand why. Maybe you'll understand why this had to be decreased as significantly, because I would argue that the current state of aerial greatsword would be broken with one of the skills that they're going to be introducing later. So keep that in mind. I believe that was the main reason why they did it. And also, to make up for that, they give you more reasons to go after actually finishing mounting attacks, which a lot of people, when they do aerial greatsword, they don't even go for the mounting attacks. They just jump off the second they get a mount. They jump off and they continue to do them. It's ledge exploit. I mean, some people can call it exploit or whatever. Doesn't really matter. It's basically abusing the ledges to do aerial greatsword. And they were trying to get people not not to do that as much. And they are increasing the damage across the board when it comes to mounted attacks. So whether it's in the head, whether it's in the back, or it's in the tail, you're going to be dealing more damage with them. They also increase the damage with the sliding attack as well, which is probably not as used as the jumping slash. But again, keep this in mind when we talk about skills, because it is going to come into play then. Finally, we go into Longsword, and I barely use the Longsword. Like, if I don't play all that much Greatsword, Longsword I play even less. But basically, when you're using Foresight Slash, if you cannot use your Spirit Gauge, then you're not going to get the effect of the Critical Eye skill, which means you're not going to be able to crit as often if you're using Foresight Slash and you do not have Spirit Gauge, so keep that in mind. Attack hitbox and attack power have also been decreased, so it's a bit of a nerf for Foresight Slash unless you have a full Spirit Gauge that you can use. The attack power of the first hits for Spirit Slash 3 has been decreased. The attack power of the fourth hit of Spirit Storm, when done to the monster's head, has been decreased. So they're nerfing the Spirit Slash and Spirit Storm a little bit, probably to get you to use some of the new moves that the Longsword has. A lot of the stuff that they're doing with nerfing some of the movesets in the weapons right now is because they are buffing them in other fields. Like, you're going to see some skills that are going to make up for this, and if some of these values were left the way that they were with the new skills that are going to come into play, they probably would become overpowered. But again, this is going to be something that we'll have to test out in the final game. Dual blades, with the exception of certain attacks, overall element and abnormal status scaling has been decreased, so it's pretty much a flat-out nerf to the dual blades. And the reasoning behind it is because you're going to see a big buff to elemental playstyle. You're going to see pretty much all of the elemental weapons dealing more damage. You're going to see a significant shift in the meta from elementalist into elemental. And dual blades would probably be ridiculously overpowered with all of the skills that they're adding into the board, particularly that new skill that they haven't shown us yet, but there's going to be a skill that is going to not only awaken element, but also it is going to increase the elemental damage of a weapon the more consecutive hits you land. So just imagine the blade dancing with dual blades with a skill like that, and you can imagine just like the ridiculous elemental damage that you would be outputting into monsters would potentially be far too powerful to be sustained. So that, I believe, is why they're doing it. And then you have the hammer, increase the stun value of charged attacks. Pretty basic buff. However, on top of this, there's also a set of skills that we will be addressing later in this video, which also play into this buff for the hammer. So if you're a hammer main, stay tuned. There's a couple more changes in here that you will want to hear about. Same thing for the hunting horn. Those two skills that I'm about to bring up when we're done with all these actions also affect the hunting horn. The speed was increased for right swing, left swing, performance, startup speed, and encore, front performance, back performance, side performance, and 3 music, note, stock, right, left performance, and backward strike attack power was increased. Now, this is something that I've mentioned, as a matter of fact, which is why I found it so funny when Dark Hero CC challenged me to make a hunting horn video, and I did that video, which is friggin' sweet. Because, like, the hunting horn just feels like every attack just flows better, and it seems that that is because most of the stuff just kind of attacks faster, starts up faster. It's just a faster weapon all around, and it's got some really cool new moves. So I think we'll see a lot of players actually playing Hunting Horn much more than we have seen in Monster Hunter World. The switch axe, this one got me a little bit confused. While pressing circle button repeatedly for wild swing, if a button is pressed to combo into another attack, even if you stop pressing circle button, wild swing will not stop. So you can't interrupt wild swing. You have to actually finish the animation for wild swing before you can move on to your follow-up attacks. Fade Slash is going to move you even further back, and I believe that Fade Slash was also changed to be vertical now. So you'll be able to hit tails and big and tall heads and stuff like that when you are using Fade Slash. Axe Morph has been added to the attack route when you land after canceling and landing Elemental Discharge. So basically, even if you cancel your Elemental Discharge, you're still going to go into Axe Morph. I was not aware that you could stay in Sword if you canceled it. But yeah, pretty much you're always going to end up in Axe mode after you do Element Discharge or Amped Element Discharge. Left and right evade distance increased while in Axe mode. Thank you, because the very first time that I ever done a build for the Switch Axe, I actually felt like, dude, I can't play Switch Axe without a Evade Extender because this weapon cannot move. it felt extremely slow. So the fact that they are increasing the evade distance, and you guys are like, well, what about back evade? Well, you have Fade Slash for that. You're going to be able to move around really back if you use Fade Slash instead of just dodging backwards. So keep that in mind. Maybe you don't need Evade Extender as much when you're playing Switch Axe, but it is what it is. Fixed an issue where super armor would not be present while climbing ledges in axe mode. I'm not sure if this is regarding like a special like attack that you do when you're going up a ledge or something, but I don't think you're supposed to have super armor when you're just climbing ledges, but whatever. Apparently they fixed that. If that is something that you experience with the Switch Axe, that's been fixed. Switch Axe, Elemental Discharge, Amped State, starting power slightly increased, so they're buffing your Elemental Discharge, as well, I would assume zero-sum discharge, right? Element Discharge, Amped State. Loop attack power also slightly increased, so these would be the ticking attacks on it, I would imagine. Sword, left to right, Rising Slash to double slash combo, regular and Amped State attack power slightly increased, so pretty much buffs across the board. Heavenward's Flurry, second hit, regular and Amped State attack power slightly increased. Element Discharge, Explosion power slightly increased. Elemental damage increased when using element files. Explosion damage from element discharge finisher increased. Wild swing, elemental, and abnormal status scaling slightly decreased. Because wild swings, after you power it up with the new attack that you can do after wild swings, I forget what the name of that attack is, but you do have a new attack that you can do after it. It basically gives you increased flinch or stagger, I forget. Basically, you have a higher chance to actually flinch monsters when you're using the axe mode, which is probably why they reduced a little bit of the abnormal status scaling and elemental damage there. But yeah, that is the Switch Axe. A lot of buffs, which in my opinion, it actually needed it. The Switch Axe needed some love. I'm still not sure if Switch Axe mains are going to find that this is enough or not, but I'm glad that Switch Axe is seeing quite a bit of love here. Then we got the Charge Blade, and the Charge Blade is, it's weird. You're going to really have to play it more in order to figure out whether or not it's been significantly nerfed or significantly buffed, because they don't talk about Savage Axe Slash here. They talk about mostly moves that we already knew. So Super Amped Elemental Discharge with Element Files will now spread less and hit closer together. So they had already done this once during Monster Hunter World, so now they're doing that again, so it's going to be even more clumped up so that you don't miss your Super Element Discharge Element Files. However, I believe they're nerfing the damage of it, so you really usually don't want to go for Super Amped when you are doing Elemental. But, you know, it is what it is. Spinning Slash, Axe to Sword Morph Slash, attack slightly increased. So this is for you to swap from Axe back to Sword. You're going to deal more damage with that. Fade Slash, attack power slightly increased. I believe that this is the backwards attack in Axe mode. Dash Slam, this is your forwards attack in Axe mode, I think. Attack power slightly increased. So basically they're buffing Axe mode to kind of, you know, get players to actually go into Axe mode and play Axe mode as opposed to... I mean, basically the meta of Charge Blade during Monster Hunter World was you would just play Sword and Shield until you needed a Super Amped Elemental Discharge, at which point, bam, you swap into Axe, Elemental Discharge, and back into Sword and Shield to stay agile, right? So they're buffing some of the Axe attacks to try to promote you to do the Axe attacks more. Jumping Slash, attack power slightly increased. I actually use this move a lot because it gives you increased reach when you're doing leaping attacks. It's pretty cool. Axe Smash, Sword to Axe Morph Slash, and Draw Attack. Attack power slightly increased. So again, more damage to when you swap into Axe mode. Overhead Slash, attack power slightly increased. Rising Slash, attack power slightly increased. Elemental Discharge 1, attack power slightly increased. Elemental Discharge 2, first hit. Attack power slightly increased. So this is when you just smack him with an Elemental Discharge that's not amped. And basically they're buffing all of that stuff. They're buffing all of it. Amped Elemental Discharge attack power slightly decreased. So they don't want you to do Super Amped Elemental Discharges all the time, which is why that is going to get a nerf. Attack power slightly decreased with files available. Super Amped Elemental Discharge, third hit, attack power decreased with files available. Super Amped Elemental Discharge, second hit, attack power slightly decreased with files not available. And Explosion's Elemental Scaling slightly decreased when using a Charge Blade with element files. So it seems like if you have an Elemental Charge Blade, they really want you to go after that new Savage Slash, which is the one that kind of transforms your shield into a chainsaw. And I think that overall, that might end up just becoming the meta. because, you know, super amped is just like getting nerfs across the board. But do not forget that despite the fact that super amped is getting a little bit nerfed, every other move with the axe is getting buffed. And you have a new axe move as well to make up for that. So keep that in mind. We'll see how it all pans out in the end. But again, I do think that a lot of people are just going to swap into Savage Slash, because that's going to allow them to use the axe more, and Charge Blade is going to be much more about balancing Sword and Shield and axe rather than just Sword and Shield into super amped elemental discharge. Now with the Insect Glaive, Jumping Advancing Slash, this is your aerial attack that you do at circle. The attack power and mount buildup was slightly increased. Mounted attacks now do more damage while moving from body to body part. For those of you that don't know, when you have an Insect Glaive and you actually jump through the different parts of the monster during a mounting attack, he kind of does like a cartwheel with the Insect Glaive, and it deals damage. Well, that's been increased, so basically they're focusing on mounting damage for the Insect Glaive, thus making it a much more viable mounting weapon. Particularly with the mount buildup increased with Jumping Advancing Slash, because previously almost any other weapon had an easier time mounting monsters than the Insect Glaive if you were trying to use the Advancing Slash. So we'll see if that makes up for that or not. Also, Kinsect bonuses have been increased, so you know whenever you have a certain Insect Glaive that says, oh, this Insect Glaive gives Sever boost, Blunt boost, or Element boost, or whatever. All of that stuff has been increased so that your Kinsects get a little bit of a buff. Which is cool, because I personally like to see Kinsects deal a little bit more damage than they already do, because Kinsects damage is pretty much negligible. And not to mention that there's moves now in Iceborne that actually get your Kinsect to like pierce through the monster and stuff. So that could be very, very interesting. Now, bow, I know that a lot of people are going to be mad, but bow is nerfs across the board. Everything gets nerfed. And here's the thing. With everything getting nerfed, it is also important to mention that now there is a super critical range, which supposedly will increase your damage all around. So maybe that's why this was nerfed. And also keep in mind that elemental damage is getting a significant buff, and bow is already an extremely powerful weapon in Monster Hunter World. Like, it's one of the top tier weapons, hands down. So they're nerfing a lot of the damage that the bow does, because with the elemental rework, the bow is just going to become even more powerful than it already is. And they kind of need to nerf that a little bit to bring it in line with the rest of the weapons. At least that's the way that I see it. There is, however, something that is a little bit frustrating for me, which is they're nerfing Dragon Piercer. And it's weird because usually, and again, I'm not a big bow user either, but usually when you see bow users, you know, the really good bow users that are using, you know, elemental damage and stuff like that, these people usually focus on normal shots and power shots, more so power shots than anything else from what I can tell. And those power shots is kind of like the bulk of the damage. Like, you don't really see, at least I usually don't really see in runs where people are doing really well with the bow, the Dragon Piercer being brought out. Usually you either build the bow for elemental damage, in which case you're focusing on power shots and normal shots. And again, correct me in the comment sections if I'm wrong here, because I might be. I don't play bow all that much. But from what I usually see is you either get the elemental builds with normal shots and power shots with the occasional arc shot weaved in between, or the Dragon Piercer builds that focus on high raw damage and all it does is just like Dragon Piercer, crit draw bows, shit like that. So them nerfing Dragon Piercer, I don't know, I kind of feel like maybe Dragon Piercer needed a bit of a rework so that it was viable in both ways, but I don't know. It's kind of weird for me. The mid-air shot, though, that definitely needed a nerf. Like, people were abusing this thing. Like, I think there's people that have killed Nergigante sub 30 seconds or something. Like, the first mid-air shot that they do, it basically makes the Nergigante, like, have PTSD. The second one they do breaks both horns. The third one they do fucking gives him permanent brain damage. And then the fourth one just, like, takes off his legs. I don't friggin' know, but, like, mid-air shots are really, really powerful. They take a considerable amount of skill to master, mind you, but still, they were really, really powerful. But yeah, that's the bow. The bow's gonna get a lot of nerfs, and I know a lot of people are gonna be angry, but keep in mind, they need to balance this out with this new super critical range that you're going to be getting, and on top of it, the fact that elemental skills are getting a significant buff. And remember that other skill that you get additional damage for consecutive hits, and with a bow, it is fairly easy to get that. You just like pop, pop, pop. Oh, look, consecutive hits. Oh, my thing is proc, and now I'm dealing even more elemental damage. That is why you're getting a lot of nerfs on the bow there. We shall see if the other skills balance that out, but that is what the bow is getting. Light bowgun and heavy bowgun. Spread ammo, vertical firing range expanded. I'm not sure how relevant this is. Again, because usually I see people that use spread ammo, they're pretty close to the monster. I don't think you're going to be missing all that much. After a cluster bomb is fired, it can no longer be detonated on the way up, only once it begins its descent. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this part is going to work. Does this mean that people can no longer like sit below a monster, shoot it, and the thing hits the monster and then it explodes? Like, will it hit the monster and not explode? Will it go through the monster and then detonate on the way down? I don't know. I'm going to have to see how this one works. If you guys understand what is going on with the cluster bombs here, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm not a big cluster guy, as you know. Increase the number of ammo crafted when crafting flaming, water, freeze, thunder, poison, and exhaust ammo. To me, this is all good news because this is the type of ammo that I like to use whenever I go with my light bowgun. I like the rapid fire elemental playstyle of the light bowgun, which wasn't the best for most monsters. It was cool though, and that is the playstyle that I like. So seeing that buffed might make me use the light bowgun a little bit more. On top of it, decrease the number of bomb berries you can possess. I forget, are the bomb berries the one that you use to craft cluster bombs? Because I do believe that they are putting in a bit of a stop to the cluster spamming that we see on a lot of runs. Normal ammo 3 and Pierce ammo 3 attack power slightly increased. I like to see this because I really like firing Pierce ammo. Cluster bombs 1, 2, and 3 explosion attack power slightly decreased. Damage to parts decreased. Wyvern ammo attack power slightly increased. I like that. I like Wyvern ammo. I'm not a big fan of clusters, as you guys know, so seeing them getting nerfed is not particularly surprising to me. Sticky ammo 2 and sticky ammo 3 attack power increased. So here's the thing. I actually agree with this. I think that sticky ammo should deal significantly more damage because I never thought sticky ammo dealt impressive damage. However, I also feel that sticky ammo should get a nerf in their stun capacity. Because as it stands right now, sticky ammo is the most reliable way to KO a monster. Like you're talking, oh, but hammer is the KO king. No. Have you ever seen sticky ammo 3 on a behemoth? Yeah, dude, forget about the hammer, okay? The hammer ain't doing jack compared to sticky ammo. Sticky ammo is way more powerful. So, in my opinion, I agree that sticky ammo needs more damage, but it needs less KO potential because right now it is the best thing to KO a monster, bar nothing, okay? At least in my humble opinion. Flaming water, freeze, thunder, raw damage slightly increased, elemental scaling decreased. This one surprised me a little bit. I guess this is to take advantage of the wounding mechanics of the Clutch Claw, but at the same time, you're nerfing Elemental when you're buffing it. Well, it could also be because, again, Elemental is coming in with major buffs, so maybe they just need to decrease the Elemental scaling to cope with that. Either way, I don't see this being a beastly change. Decrease the cooldown period for heavy bowgun special ammo. This is sweet. One of the things that would be cool as well is if Focus decreased it even further, because Focus already decreases the usage of special ammo in heavy bowguns and bowguns. I would just like to see it decreased by a little bit more. Basically, I want to be Rambo. Can I be Rambo? Can I just like Wyvern Heart my way with a heavy bowgun and not use any other ammo? I guess that'd be a little bit too powerful, but a man can dream. Skill adjustments and changes. Okay, so this is very important, and like I said, a lot of these are going to play into some of the changes that we've seen in the weapon. So poison resistance. Previously, this skill shortened the time you took poison damage, so when you get poison, how long that poison lasts. Now it is going to extend the intervals between when you can receive poison damage. So basically, this is going to give poison monsters a diminishing return effect on players. So the more they poison us, the more resilient we become if we use poison resistance. Stun resistance, reduce duration stun even further. So basically level 1 and 2 of the skill stun resistance now provide us with 60 and 90%. So you can become almost stun immune with level 2. Not stun immune, but basically stun lasts almost nothing when you get to level 2 of stun resistance, which is pretty cool. We see a couple more of these. Now hunger resistance is weird for me because I never even thought about using that skill. Same thing for Iron Skin. I still don't think that I will ever use this skill, but both of them got buffed. Level 1 from 30% to 50%, level 2 from 60% to 100% for hunger resistance, and for Iron Skin, level 1 30 to 50, and level 2 60 to 75. So flat out buffs across the board for these two skills. Blast resistance also getting buffed. Level 1 now does 50% up from 30. Level 2 does 75% up from 60. Entomologist. When slaying small insects, it will become easier to carve materials from them. I thought we already had a skill like this, but again, this is a skill that I don't pay that much attention to. And finally, Tool Specialist, which is where I wanted to see a significant buff. Did get a buff, but not as much as I would like. But then again, they're also going to be nerfing mantles in further up ahead, so don't worry too much about that. But either way, level 1 is going to be 10% up from 5. Level 2 is going to be 20% up from 10. Level 3 is going to be 30% up from 20. So flat out buffs to Tool Specialist. This might be something that I might be using on some builds if I can squeeze it in, because I do like having my mantles available more often. And do keep in mind, the mantles will be having decoration slots. So this is also important because of that, because if you want to get access to those additional skills, you'll need to put the mantle that has those skills. And if you use Tool Specialist, you will be able to have that mantle up more often. Skill adjustments and changes. Airborne, jumping attack power increased even more. See, this is why I told you that the Greatsword needed a massive nerf on its aerial attack, because jumping power previously was 10% damage boost. You're talking about a tier 2 decoration skill, so it's one level 2 slot, one skill gave you a 10% boost. It is now getting buffed to 30%. If you did not nerf the current playstyle of aerial greatsword, this would be beyond broken. This would just completely destroy. Like, the greatsword would just annihilate everything. It already kind of does. But with a flat out 20% damage boost on top of what it already does, it would just be ridiculous. It would be completely unsustainable. That's why the jumping slash received such a beefy nerf. Also keep in mind, this applies to pretty much any weapon that has jumping attacks. So the sword and shield attack down. Actually, does it apply to shield attack down? I'm not 100% sure. But it definitely applies to the spinning thing of the hammer. So hammer is going to be... hammer is going to receive some massive buffs. Critical status upon a critical hit occurs with the greatsword, hammer, hunting horn, or heavy bowgun. The abnormal status effect scaling is improved even further. This is only for bigger, slower weapons because, you know, smaller weapons already hit the monsters significantly fast, so it shouldn't really be a problem. Critical element, when a critical hit occurs, the elemental scaling is improved even further. So again, buffing elemental, buffing statuses overall, whilst also making status viable with big weapons. However, I'm not so sure about the hammer, because when you start spinning to winning and you get yourself critical status and it increases even more, like, hammer is going to be pretty friggin' powerful. Para-hammer, sleep hammer, these are going to be things that we will be seeing, I think, moving into Iceborne. Anyway, moving right along. Non-elemental boost. Maximum increased attack power is lower. We already talked about this. It used to be 10%. It's going to go down to 5%. So they may be over-adjusting here, which means that elemental is really going to start taking a elementalist, I mean, is really going to start taking a back seat. We shall see how it pans out in the final version of the game, how it compares once we actually get some numbers going. But right now, it's fairly easy to look at this and think, wow, they really are overcompensating, but we shall see in the final game. Defense boost at level 3 and above, the defense of the equipment equipped is increased 5 to 10%, even more depending on the level of the skill. So they're buffing defense boost. And then heavy artillery, this one really surprised me. Attack power for ballistae, cannons, etc. is increased even more. 50% at level 1, up from 10, so that's a 40% buff. 100% at level 2, up from 20%. An 80% boost in damage, which means that, you know, you take these into your siege encounters, you're going to be top damage maybe if you're able to line up those shots. So they're really buffing the crap out of this skill, which is cool, because you know, it's a role that not a lot of people usually take, like, oh yeah, sure, I'll man the cannon. Yeah, right. And here is the skill that I told you needed to pay attention to in regards to the hammer, because on top of the hammer just getting a flat-out buff to its ability to stun monsters, Slugger is getting a 10% buff across the board. So level 1, 20 up from 10, level 2, 30 up from 20, and level 3, 40 up from 30. So just a flat out 10% buff across the board. You're going to be able to stun monsters more often. And Stamina Thief also getting a 10% buff. So 20% up from 10, 30% up from 20, and 40% up from 30 to its respective slots, its respective levels. I mean, you will be able to get 40% exhaust out of Stamina Thief and 40% stun power out of Slugger, which is a significant buff for hammer users, on top of already added stun bonus just for using the weapon itself. Hopefully this will make the hammer be the KO king, but I don't know. I still think that sticky ammunition might just take that spot. I don't know. Either way, then we have a couple of more adjustments. Survival Expert was buffed across the board. I'm not going to get into the specifics for this. You guys can see it on screen right now. And Cliffhanger, which is probably going to be a staple skill in pretty much every build that I do in Iceborne, because I love the Clutch Claw. You guys seen whenever I was playing the beta, pretty much every chance I had, Clutch Claw, push monster onto wall. I do that stuff all the time. So Cliffhanger is going to become a staple skill for me, which means that stamina usage is going to be reduced, and it now works when you're grappling via Clutch Claw, and it is buffed from 25% to 50%. So you're going to use 50% less stamina when you are grabbing onto monsters, which to me is a massive deal, because like I said, I plan on using Clutch Claw quite a bit. Agitator is going to get an affinity nerf. Now, do keep in mind, they're only showing you the changes in affinity here. So I actually had a number of people ask me during my live stream, so what's the point in investing in this unless you're going all the way to level 5? Keep in mind that there's also going to be attack values next to these affinity percentages. So it's going to be, I don't know if it's like 5 or 8 attack plus 3% affinity, something attack plus 6%. Now it's going to be flat 5% affinity across the board until you reach level 5, at which point it becomes 10%. But keep in mind that a lot of the affinity skills are getting buffed, and you're going to have more affinity overall by the time you get to endgame. So that's why they're nerfing it in Agitator, although to be honest, I don't know that they needed to do that, but you know, it is what it is. Weakness Exploit, we talked about this one previously. Basically, in order for you to get the same effect that you have with Weakness Exploit right now, you're going to need to apply the Wounded debuff through the Clutch Claw. So basically, base, you're going to have 10% at level 1, 15% at level 2, and 30% at level 3. But if you wound the part that you're attacking, that is going to increase to 15%, 30%, and 50%, which is what we have right now. So basically, so long as you take care to wound the part that you're attacking, you're not going to feel any difference. If you don't wound it, though, then this is a flat nerf to Weakness Exploit. So keep that in mind. Critical Eye getting adjusted, and it's basically an increase across the board. You're going to get an additional 10% if you max it out. And pretty much every rank is going to give you more affinity than you've had before. So this is going to allow you to get even more crits. Heroics got a beefy offensive nerf and a big defensive buff, which probably means you won't see this skill as often in speedruns. If you're talking about level 5 heroics, you're only seeing a 15% increase in damage, which is basically a 50% nerf. On the other hand, you get a lot more defense, because they want this to be a skill where, you know, it triggers and you won't instantly die. But in my opinion, it's just kind of weird. I'm just not sure how much of a difference 100 defense is going to make when you're that low on health, especially taking into consideration some of the arch-tempered monsters that we fought near the end of Monster Hunter World, where pretty much sometimes one hit is like your full health bar. So it's like if you're down to, I don't know if this triggers at 30% or 10% or whatever it is, but if you're down to 30%, is 100 defense really going to keep you alive against like an attack from an arch-tempered monster? I don't think so. However, it is also important to mention that if you are a speedrunner, that they are going to be adding a new skill, not at launch, but later down the line with updates. They will be adding a new skill which will give you attack at exchange for health. We're not exactly sure how that's going to work out, but basically they said, we're going to make a new skill for all you speedrunners out there that like to play the high-risk game of having low health and dealing a crap ton of damage. But that's not going to be at release. That will be in a future update. A couple more skill adjustments and changes. Aquatic / polar mobility formerly was just Aquatic Expert. Basically, it now applies to areas with deep snow. This was the skill that allowed you to move when you had like big bodies of water and you're walking around there, you're kind of just like sludging through. The snow is going to be the same thing. If you use this, you're not going to have that problem. Fortify. Fixed an issue where effects would continue during an expedition. This basically changes almost nothing unless you were exploiting Fortify in expeditions, which, who does that? So this is not really a big deal. Maximum Might is going to receive the changes that we talked about in our previous video. Basically, this activates when stamina is at its maximum for several seconds, and after activation, if the stamina is used, the effects will continue for a few seconds. But they don't talk about when you get to level 4, like we talked about in the previous video. Supposedly it works like it did previously, but whatever. Basically, we had already talked about this in the other video that I showed you guys. Flinch free. When 3 extracts have been gathered by the Kinsect, knockback reduction is improved even more. This is for insect glaive users, so you know you're going to be able to get increased knockback reduction if you have the 3 extracts gathered by your Kinsect. Mantles. The active duration of the Temporal Mantle is reduced with each use, which means basically every time you do a dodge and you have the Temporal Mantle, you know, when you get an auto dodge proc with it because a monster was going to hit you with a big hit, that is going to cut off 20 seconds off of your Temporal Mantle. Now, previously Temporal Mantle lasted for 90 seconds and had a 300-second cooldown. Now, Temporal Mantle is going to last 120 seconds, so probably the maximum amount of dodges that you're going to get is going to be around 5. You know, because you're going to get 20 seconds taken off the clock every time you dodge a monster. So it's a big nerf to Temporal Mantle. They don't want people to be relying on Temporal Mantle as much, at which point I say, well, don't make your arch-tempered monsters hit as fucking hard then. Just thought. Anyway, reduced cooldown timer on the Glider Mantle. So it's going to have a 120-second cooldown for the Glider Mantle. So if you like to play aerial game, you're going to see a bit of a buff here. The Assassin's Hood now causes monsters to flinch from a mid-air attack while in stealth mode instead of a knockdown. Most of the people in my stream weren't even aware that you could knock down a monster by attacking it from stealth with the Assassin's Hood. That was pretty much news for us, but now you're not going to be able to do that anymore, and instead the monster is just going to flinch as opposed to getting knocked down. Also on mantles, adjusted so that minuscule amounts of damage remove mantles less frequently. What this means is, like, you know how when you put on your Challenger Mantle and then a monster touches you and it's gone? That's not going to happen as often, so you might be able to keep your Challenger Mantle for a little bit longer. And there were probably other mantles that did the same thing, but Challenger Mantle is the only one that I can really think that I personally would like to use and would like to see this thing not happen as often. So, you know, there's that. Quest adjustments. Track gathering volume has been adjusted for low and high rank game progression. When accidentally dropping into an area other than the camp when the quest starts, a player will end up either in an area with good gathering points or in the same area as the monster. So if you're fighting Arch-Tempered Nergigante and your worm messes up, Nergigante is going to be like, oh yeah, drop him right here, and then you're going to drop in Nergigante and be like, slap, done, you're dead. But yeah, basically this is cool because you're either going to get a benefit by getting into actually good gathering points when you land, or you're going to get screwed. It's the luck of the draw. After completing an optional quest, you can now set your return destination in the options. This is so that you can set up like a default so that you don't always have to swap it, because personally I always go back to HQ. But maybe this time we can actually go back to friggin' Gathering Hall if we have all of our functionalities there. So we'll see how that turns out. New acknowledgements have been added to the Hunter highlights that appear after completing a quest. So this is new stuff that pops up at the end of the quest. Not really a big deal. New feature has been added to summarize the Hunter highlights. I would imagine this is something that you see in your guild car. Monster adjustments. When the player is a certain distance away, attacks from outside the area may not inflict damage. So this is apparently because some people were being cheeky little bastards and trying to abuse mobs from outside the area they were supposed to be fighting them in. Well, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Monster breath attacks will no longer trigger certain interactables such as vitalities or spore puffs. Near death, monsters will no longer go to sleep in their nest if the player is present. Thank you, because it never makes any sense when you're chasing an Nergigante back to its nest and he sees you coming back to his nest. He's like, the hell, what are you really going to do? It's not like you've been beating the crap out of me this whole time. I'm just going to go to sleep right in front of you. That didn't make any goddamn sense. Not to mention it created bad habits in me, because when I went back to play Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, I would never let monsters fall asleep because I'm like, oh yeah, he's retreating to the next, he's gonna go to sleep. And then I would go after them and they would never sleep because you have to wait This to me is a great feature because it better simulates the whole hunting aspect of it. Because like, look, the monster doesn't feel safe. He's not gonna fall asleep. Personally, I love this change. Like, love it. I know that some people are going to be frustrated about that, but it's like, hey, tough shit, dude. Anyway, monsters with friendly relations like Rathalos and Rathian will no longer flinch when hit by each other's attack. Fix an issue where the abnormal status effect would accumulate even when already afflicted with that status. Just kind of bug fixes here. Quest difficulty will now scale in real time according to the number of players in the quest. We already knew this. Also, there's going to be 3 different tiers of difficulty, which is single player if there's only 1 hunter in the quest, 2 players, which is there's 2 hunters in the quest, and 3 players. So even when you have like 4 players in the quest, 3 and 4 players is going to be the same level of difficulty. Monsters will go into rage mode less easily during low and high rank multiplayer quests. Don't know why. I don't know why this is needed. Were they raging too much? Was that a problem? I don't understand. But either way, they go into rage less often now. Seems like a nerf to me. Seems like making stuff a little bit more accessible. Hopefully I'm wrong. Guard directional hitboxes of certain attacks that are difficult to block have been adjusted so that players will not be hit by unintended attacks. I have felt like a lot of times some attacks that hit you are kind of weird. Like they dead angle you or something, but at the same time it feels kind of wrong. So this is good. The frequency of how often monster partners, Rathalos and Rathian, for example, will call for each other has been reduced. So you're no longer going to be fighting, when you're fighting Rathalos and Rathian, you're no longer going to be fighting both of them at the same time for most of the fight. Regular attacks will no longer leave wound marks on the monsters, as Clutch Claw attacks will now do that when a monster's part has been wounded. Monster adjustments. Monster will also now build a tolerance to flash attacks, while monsters will be less susceptible to flash attacks or be completely immune to them for a period of time. Their tolerance will reset afterwards. So basically, you're not going to be able to spam flash all the friggin' time and abuse monsters that fly. Because previously, when you're fighting Rathalos, he basically becomes not very threatening. Because you know that every time he flies, you fire up a flash into the air, down he comes. Same thing for Kushala Daora, for instance. Kushala is like this really menacing dragon because he goes up into flight, but you can just flash him and down he comes and you beat the crap out of him and you can just abuse him because you can carry up to 12 flashes with 12? Am I saying that right? Is it 12? Is it 13? I forget. 12 or 13 flashes with you per hunt because you can just like take the insects and craft those mid-hunt and it's not a problem at all. So the fact that you're not going to be able to do that, to me, that is a good thing because you now have another tool to deal with the fact that monsters do, whenever they go up in the air, you can basically just use the Clutch Claw and use that to bring them down. I like that. I like the diversity as opposed to just like, oh no, just flash them, bring them down, kill them. Because the whole purpose is for you to hunt them. So that's cool. I like the way that it was in the beta, where like I flashed Rathalos once, and after that I just wasn't able to flash him for quite some time, and I was like, what's going on? So that was cool. This is a good change. Then we have some more stuff on the user interface. Default return destination after request can now be changed. We already talked about this. Health and stamina gauges can be set to display at all time. HUD on-off customization options added. There's actually a lot of new customization options into your HUD. You can like customize it almost like an MMO now, if I remember, because I've seen some screenshots of that. HDR settings, in addition to brightness and color, you can now adjust contrast. This is also important because they don't mention it here, but they said during the presentation that brightness no longer just makes the game more white. It actually increases brightness as opposed to just kind of like whitewashing it. So if you've had issues with brightness in Monster Hunter World, which I personally have had, you might want to check this out after Iceborne comes up. I believe these may be available for Monster Hunter World as well. Colorblind settings also added. Camera and scout fly settings added. Super fast option added. The camera speed, super fast option added. Reticle speed. Type 4 added. Control item settings. And player silhouette display setting added. This is the silhouette, the gray silhouette of your character. A lot of people asked me about that when I was playing the beta. That's what that is. Hunting Horn button guide setting added should make it easier for Hunting Horn users to understand what the hell they're doing. Character name display setting added. Trajectory reticle controls added. New stickers, new gestures, new poses. There's also the view mode, which is basically photo mode, which is something that I've wanted since the beta of Monster Hunter World. So thank God they're adding that in. You can now randomize your characters when you are creating your Hunter and Palico. And you can see all the settings when you are creating your Hunter and Palico. You guys are like, well, what is this? You can see the values of stuff, which means that like if you share the values of your character, it should be fairly easy for anyone to basically recreate the character that you've made, in case you're doing something like recreating, I don't know, Michael Jackson in Monster Hunter or something like that. It should be fairly easy for other people to copy paste the template that you've used if you just give them the number settings. Luminescent added for Hunter makeup settings, pages added to the quest reward screen, take all option added to the quest reward screen. PC already has this. Why don't we have this yet? Display rules for a player, name and color have changed. Story summaries added to the loading screens, large monsters, small monsters, and endemic life are separately categorized in the Monster Hunter Field Guide. Basically, they've reorganized the Monster Field Guide because there's going to be a lot of new monsters being added into the game, and I don't want you like scrolling through pages and pages and pages of monsters to get to the monster that you're interested in learning about. Sound options added upon booting the game for the first time. Sharpness Gauge now shows how much sharpness is extended by the handicraft skills, which is pretty cool. So that you no longer have to, oh, I guess I have to equip level 5 handicraft to figure out how much sharpness I can actually get for this weapon. Is this weapon going to get white sharpness? So it's cool that that is there. The game will no longer save when you exit the title screen's options settings without changing anything. Option added to the shortcut menu to accept all guild cards and items from other players. This is only available for Iceborne. Kind of sucks. I feel like this feature should be in the base game. Palico edit vouchers cannot be purchased from the store. I don't like this. I like this at all. I kind of feel like recustomizing your character should be something that you could farm for in-game, but, you know, it is what it is. It's the same thing with the character vouchers. I don't really care much for those. I don't like that type of monetization. Like, I think it's cool that they sell gestures, stickers, all of this crazy stuff, but selling vouchers for customizing your character, I'm not a fan of that at all. And vouchers for recustomizing your Palico, not a fan of that at all. I think that should be stuff that you should be able to get in-game. Also, I think, and this is not something that has been confirmed, but I strongly would like to see that with Iceborne, every player should get a voucher for their character and another voucher for their Palico, because there's going to be new options in the character creator, and I think that should be something that they should provide players with. Item box getting upgraded. Up to 80 item loadouts can now be registered. The equipment box can now be upgraded to 100 pages. Unfortunately, only if you have Iceborne. Up to 28 equipment loadouts can now be registered. The Palico equipment box can be upgraded up to 30 pages. All of these features, the ones that are with the star, will only work if you have Iceborne. Layered armor option, layered armor loadout option added, which basically means with your loadouts you can have specific layered armors, which is cool. So layered armor no longer becomes something that is universal, like you pick your layered armor and you have that for everything. You can basically associate it on a per set basis. Layered armor and regular armor pigment colors now managed separately, also very cool. When registering an equipment loadout, you can now add layered armor. So again, when you register your loadouts, you can have specific layered armor for that set. Smithy, you can now forge layered armor at the smithy as opposed to having to do turn-in quests. And you can preview the layered armor at the smithy as well to decide whether or not that's something that you want to get, which previously you could not preview it. You would have to rely on external websites or something like that. Check marks are added to charms that you've already crafted. This is important because once you upgrade a charm, it no longer shows that you have that charm in the game. So I myself have crafted several charms of the same kind multiple times because I wasn't paying attention. So basically now if you have like a level 3 of a charm, it will show you if you go to craft the level 1 of that charm, like, hey, you already have a higher version of this. You can now select between changing Hunter or Palico equipment with the change equipment option, so you no longer have to go to your room to change the Palico equipment, which is cool. Smithy, remove all decorations option added. Thank God. Sort decoration option added in the set decorations menu. Research base, smithy, and resource center facilities will become available in the research base as you progress through the game, which means that you can actually use it as a base because you now have access to everything from there. I believe that the Botanical Research Center is also going to be available through the Research Center facility from now on. So if you're wondering, well, what about my farm? That's supposedly going to be accessible through the Resource Center. I don't remember, but Kegren was telling me in my stream that that is the case. So most likely it is the case, and I just don't remember it at this point. Ecological research, large monsters, small monsters, and endemic life are now separately categorized. We talked about this already. Quest counter threat level is displayed on tempered monster investigation so that you know how hard it is. Resource Center special reward spots have been added to the managed investigation screen. Delete all and register investigations options added. Thank you. The number of investigations you can register and maintain has been increased. Also, thank you. Endemic Life will now have sizes and the detailed settings option available under Place Your Pets in Your Room. Training Area Cumulative Damage Log has been added to the training room. This is really cool because you can now actually see how much damage your attacks do. It's going to make Jinjinx and Tuna's life a lot easier, I would imagine. And to top it off, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, they're also going to put like a bunch of barrels that kind of like simulates a monster, and you can use that to practice like clutch claw and stuff like that on the training area. They don't talk about that here, but you can do that as well. And you can pick up a bunch of different slinger ammo in the training area as well to practice with your clutch claw. Finally, when selling life powder, the price has changed to 109 zeni because supposedly there's going to be like a higher powered version of life powder. Although I'm not sure why the price is that relevant. Who the hell is selling their life powder? Come on, people. Online session ID input and display is now shown in segments of 3. You can now set up the 2 welcome messages in the Gathering Hub. Login bonus is now available for everyone at UTC 00, which is good. They then also talked about the Gunlance changes that we had already talked about, and that was pretty much it. And unfortunately, it looks like with all the stuff that I wanted to talk about, I ended up taking a lot longer than the video that they've done it themselves. But I wanted to give you guys my personal feedback on all of these changes. And even though I spoke as fast as I possibly could, it still apparently took me a lot longer than I initially planned. But hey, the live stream version of me watching that video is over 2 hours long, so there you go. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you guys watching the videos. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button because that is basically going to help me quite a bit here in the channel. It is super important. If you didn't like the video, hit the dislike button because feedback is also important. Leave me your comments and feedback in the comment section down below. And if you like my content, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so that you might occasionally be notified whenever YouTube feels like it. Appreciate you watching. Stay strong. May your shields never break.